Professor Geist, I'd like to start with you. You've raised some concerns about regulating this type of content, but isn't this content illegal? Maybe it's a good idea to create a process to remove illegal content online. How do you respond to that?
I think my concerns have been primarily focused on not so much whether we regulate the content, but this particular proposal and how we're going about doing it. I think one of the things that we saw both in the debate around C10 that some of your viewers may recall, as well as this debate, is that there is a tendency at times by the government to try to frame this as either kind of you're with us or you're against us, either you're for regulation or you're against it. And I don't think that that really reflects where the debate is or where the debate ought to be. So it's not about whether or not we ensure that we've got effective tools to deal with content that, as you suggested off the top, is abhorrent. It's whether or not the tools, the new tools that are being introduced, one, are strictly necessary. And we know that we are already dealing in these instances with illegal content, and there are already powers to try to deal with that. And if they're insufficient, then we should be taking action. But we also need to be cognizant of some of the costs and the risks associated with some of these proposals. And I think that that's where the government in this proposal really gets it wrong. I mean, I think it really is very dismissive of some of the core fundamental freedoms, some of the charter rights along the way. And so the pendulum swings so far in the direction of takedown that the result is that it won't just be illegal content that gets caught up, but an assortment of other content, perfectly lawful content as well.
Yeah, so one of the proposals is a 24-hour takedown requirement. Platforms would be required to respond to reports of this content within 24 hours. Now, Mr. Haradai, do you have any concerns about that takedown requirement? Is it too short and will end up having a chilling effect on speech as these platforms try to avoid penalty and just take down anything that gets reported?
So I agree with Professor Geist about the nature of this debate. I think that it's helpful to avoid the extremes in terms of what we're looking at. But, the question that I would say in response to you, Christine, is even 1 minute or 1 second of child pornography appropriate online? And so, in certain circumstances, it is, I would say, very much justified to have content that is that harmful removed immediately. And when we're dealing with certain industries that have the ability to respond within 24 hours, so be it. And I think the bigger question will be, though, what checks or balances are in place? And after that 24 hours, is there a mechanism to properly challenge and review the way that these powers are being exercised?
Mr. Geist, I just want to give you a chance to respond to that before turning to Mr. Goldberg.
Yeah, I think it's a great point. I think it actually highlights one of the many problems, in my view, with this consultation, and that is that it treats all of this content in precisely the same fashion, as if child pornography is the same as hate speech and is the same as other kinds of images, or the same as all the other kind of things, so-called terrorism content that gets wrapped up in this. And the reality is that they are, while I think clearly would object to all of these forms of content, the tools that we would use to address that kind of content, I think in many ways ought to be different. And without that kind of granularity, by packaging this all together and saying it's all the same, you end up with CSIS-related concerns around terrorism, child pornography concerns, which of course concerns all of us, hate speech, which concerns a whole series of groups that may be themselves the target of these kinds of rules. And so I don't think you end up with an effective mechanism to deal with these issues.
Professor Geist, we've got to go to commercial break. I'll let you finish after this break.